بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين جل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Inshallah, we are starting tonight قاعدة نفي الحرج. The rule of نفي الحرج, which is very practical and useful rule to know. Sheikh Irwani says this is one of the important rules that fuqaha applied many times, but unfortunately there is not that much independent, focused discussion on this rule. For example, about Qa'idi al-Dharar, there are many books that in usul or fiqh, they have addressed Qa'idi al-Dharar. Or there are independent books and essays on Qa'idi al-Dharar. He says there is not that much about Qa'idi Nafi al-Haraj, so we try to address major issues about this qaida and inshallah make it clear. As it has been our practice and our habit, we start with madhmun al-qaida. What is the definition of this qaida? What is the argument or proof for this qaida? We also have to explain what's the difference between this qaida and qa'idatul al-dharar? Because haraj and dharar may seem to some people similar, but we will explain that they are not the same. And then why this rule precedes the primary rulings about obligations. For example, when there is a wuzu which causes haraj, why Nafyul Haraj precedes the reference which says wuzu is wajib? Because Nafyul Haraj says in this case that wuzu is very, very difficult, extremely difficult. You don't do wuzu, you do tayammum. So it's overriding or preceding the rule of wujub al-wudu. Why? Remember we had a discussion about this about Qadi al-Dharar. We said there are different opinions. We mentioned 2 points. Then, inshallah, we will talk about a problem that actually was raised with Qadi al-Dharar as well, that some people have said that this leads to kathrat al-takhsis. Because many things we know that they exist, that they cause harm. You remember we said, for example, jihad is not easy. Qisas is not, something that you don't cost. It doesn't cost you anything. You remember we said there are some harms, and if you want to exclude all this, then it becomes not nice, not reasonable. That you mention a law, and then you exclude many things. You remember we said like akram al-ulama. If you say akram al-ulama and there are 100 alim, then you start, counting and excluding 90% of them. It doesn't look nice. But then we had an answer over there, if you remember. So we will discuss also here the same issue. Then there is a very good question. When we say haraj means something which is exceptionally difficult. Yeah. When we say there is no haraj in Islamic legislation, is it based on each person, or in general? Because maybe you have a person who is very strong, very capable, very determined. And for him, it's easy. But for most of people, it's terribly difficult. Or vice versa. Maybe for someone, it's very difficult because he's weak. His body is weak, for example. For most of people, it's okay. So should we look at each person's capacity or in general? So we say, is it naw'i or shakhsi? Okay? Another issue is, when we say there is no haraj in Islamic legislation, there is nothing which is exceptionally difficult legislated, does it mean that then in cases, in circumstances that something becomes haraj, we must not do it? Or it means that wujub is removed, but still it is matlub? For example, if in a case, wuzu is very difficult, it's very cold winter, and you have to go, for example, for Salatul Fajr, several kilometers in midnight to get water for wuzu. So we say, Nafyul Haraj requires that you don't need to make wuzu. You can make tayammum. Of course, if you can bring water in advance and prepare yourself, you must. But if all of a sudden you realize there is no water, okay, or pipe water is, stopped, and you have to go in the freezing cold, you have no car, nothing, to the river, several kilometers. Okay? So, we say there is no haraj in Islam, therefore this wuzu is not obligatory. Suppose. Now the question is, if someone says, no, I have to go and make wuzu with water. Although, suppose we say, Nafyul Haraj said, you shouldn't, you don't need. He insists, he says, no, I don't want to take any risk with my wuzu. I want to go and make wuzu while tayammum was okay. So does it mean that his wuzu is void? Or we can say there was no need, but still it is okay. So is it rukhsa? Is it a kind of facility and permission not to make wuzu here? Or it's a must? It's a good question. Another thing is, does qa'idatu nafy al-haraj include al-ahkam al-wad'iyyah, situational rulings? You remember we said al-hukmu imma taklifiyyun aw wad'iyyun. You remember? In usul, many times we had this. Al-hukmu taklifi is one of those 5 ahkam. Wujub, hurma, karaha, istihbab, and ibaha. But al-ahkam al-wad'iyyah is not primarily about duty of mukallaf, although it can imply, like zawjiyah, like milkiyah, like tahara, najasa. Okay? These are ahkam al-wad'iyyah. Sababiyat, shartiyat, all these are ahkam al-wad'iyyah. Something about Hausa studies is different from other subjects, is that you should always remember everything. Okay? You cannot say, we learn, we take the exam, we pass. Everything is needed. Yeah? It's like a doctor that has to remember all the medicines. He cannot say it's not needed. Or a technician who should know all the tools all the time. Yeah? So you have to always remember. It's not enough just to study and pass the test. Okay? And something that helps you a lot to remember is mubahasa. Okay. Then at the end there are some applications. So let's start with the first thing. Madhmunul qa'idah. What is the meaning or definition? Salam alaikum. What is the meaning or definition of qa'idatu nafy al-haraj? Sheikh Irwani says, unlike Qa'idiyya la dharar, the rule of no harm, which was very much discussed, and there were lots of sometimes, differences of opinions and, debates, here it's not very controversial because it's very clearly established in the Quran, okay, that there is no haraj in Islamic Sharia. So we know that anything which is by urf, by common sense, is considered as haraj, means something which is very, very difficult, exceptionally difficult, a difficulty which normally is not tolerated, is not legislated, and if a legislation in a particular case leads to this, in that particular case that legislation is not effective. So there is no legislation that all the time or most of the time leads to haraj. And if a legislation which is normally okay, like wudu, fasting, if in a particular case leads to haraj, at that time we say it's not necessary. Okay? The reason for clarity and not having difference of opinion that much is Quran. For example, Surah Al-Hajj, chapter Hajj, pilgrimage, verse 78. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made necessary over you, or has not put on your shoulder, on your neck, haraj, any exceptionally difficult task in religion. Millata abikum Ibrahim. This is actually the tradition of your father Ibrahim. So in all Abrahamic traditions and branches of that tradition, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not legislated anything which would be exceptionally or extraordinarily difficult. And if you ask anyone, what does it mean that there is no haraj fi din? It's very clear that's about legislation. Yeah? What's the proof? The Quran, as we said. This is one ayah. Another ayah is Surah Ma'idah verse 6. Surah Ma'idah verse 6. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. وإن كنتم مرضى أو على سفر أو جاء أحد منكم من الغائط أو لامستم النساء فلم تجدوا ماء فتيمموا سعيدا طيبا. This ayah is about people who have some excuses. They cannot use water. So Allah says, Tayammamu sa'idan tayyiba. You should do tayammum with sa'id. Sa'id with sad means something which is from earth, earthy material. And this is tayyib, this is pleasant. And famsahu biwujuhikum wa aydiyakum min ma yuridu Allahu liyaj'ala alaykum min haraj. Allah doesn't want to put any haraj on you, to put you in very difficult situation, to put you in pain and extremely difficult situation. Another ayah which is also mentioned by some people, but Sheikh Irwani says this is not very maybe good argument, because this ayah seems to be perhaps only for fasting. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا, Surah Baqarah verse 185. وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ. After Allah says legislation has been completed for fasting in the months of Ramadan, then He says if someone is traveling or he is ill, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. He fasts some other days, means after months of Ramadan. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants and wills for you to have ease, not difficulty. But if someone says we can use the ending phrase of this quotation, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. If someone says this is general and we use it to say in entire religion, entire sharia, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. He says this is not illah for hukm. If it was illah for hukm, then it was possible to generalize. Because you know, whenever you reach illah, the cause for legislation, you can take it to other cases. Yeah? Salam alaikum. If you remember in Usul al-Fiqh, we used to say, al-illatu imma mu'ammimatun aw mukhassasah. What does it mean? Means illah can exclude or can include. What does it mean? It means that if you know illah, you can extend this ruling to similar cases which share the same illah, and you can exclude cases from the same title if they don't share the illah. For example, if the doctor tells you لا تأكل الرمان فإنه حامض, he says don't eat rumman, pomegranate, yeah, because it is sour. If he says because it is sour, so you realize that the illah for prohibition is sourness. Therefore, if there is a lemon which is sour, an orange which is sour, it will be the same. Mu'ammimatun means it will extend the hukm to other subjects which are not called rumman, but they have the same illah. On the other hand, if there is a rumman which is very sweet, then that's not a problem. You can eat that. Mukhassasatu. Al-illatu mu'ammimatun wa mukhassasa. Means illah can extend to similar cases and can exclude those instances that do not share the same cause, although the title is the same. It's rumman, but sweet. This is about illah. يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ is not illah. It is hikmah for hukm. It's the wisdom behind the hukm. Why? Do you know the difference between illah and hikmah? Hikmah is part of the reason, not complete reason. Therefore, it's not 100% coming with the ruling. For example, here, is it possible to say that for all people who travel, fasting is difficult? No. But still we say, when you travel, you shouldn't fast. So that was hikmah, that was the wisdom. Hikmah doesn't need to be 100% identical with the hukm. So we say in some cases, for example, like we say, a lady who was married and is now divorced should observe iddah. After divorce, should observe iddah. What is hikmah for this? Maybe, of course, we don't know everything. We don't know illah. But we say hikmah is that if she is pregnant, the father of the child is known. Yeah? This is hikmah. If someone says, okay, now with modern techniques, I can tell you 100% whether this lady is pregnant or not, so there is no need for iddah. What do you say? You say no, still she should observe iddah. because we don't have any way to establish that that was the reason. Yes, that could be part of the considerations. That was hikmah, not illah. Is it clear? So, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ, which is at the end of this ayah about fasting, cannot be taken as a general rule and applied to cases other than fasting. Okay? But مَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ, or مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَرَجٍ, those two verses are very general and we can use them. Then there are many hadiths mentioned, but Sheikh Ilwani says we don't need to mention those hadiths because it's very clear based on the Quran. What about aql and ijma? Al-Kitab wa Sunnah are clear. What about aql and ijma? He says we cannot use aql here. Why? Because from a rational point of view, it's not impossible to legislate something which is very difficult. If something is impossible, yes, aql says you cannot legislate something which is impossible. But it's possible to legislate something which is very difficult. Why we don't have this in Islam or in the tradition of Ibrahim? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been kind. Otherwise, there were some nations that because of some of their problems, Allah had made it actually necessary for them to do very difficult things. Yes? Therefore, in the Quran, we say in Surah Baqarah, verse 286, رَبَّنَا وَلَا تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْنَا إِسْرًا كَمَا حَمَلْتَهُ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِنَا. Isr means al-amru shaq, something which is difficult. So there were nations, for example, Allah says in the Quran, another place, فَبِظُلْمٍ مِّنَ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا حَرَّمْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ طَيِّبَاتٍ أُحِلَّتْ لَهُمْ. Some of the halal things which were prohibited for some nations. The rules for tahara and najasa were very difficult. Sometimes for tathir, they had to remove that part which is najas. Yeah? So, it's not from aql point of view impossible. But we have a kind of gracious legislation. You know, that Allah says, no, if something is very difficult, it's like impossible. Yeah? He considers something which is very difficult like impossible. He says, no, I don't want you to go through such difficulties. What about ijma? Can someone argue for qa'idatul nafi al-haraj based on ijma? The answer is no. Why? Because we said al-ijma'ul madraki laysa bihujjah. Whenever you have a consensus, but this consensus is based on an ayah or hadith that we have it, we cannot use ijma. You have to look into this hadith or ayah and see whether dalala, or in the case of hadith, dalala and sanad are complete for you or not. If you know all of them agreed because of this hadith, for example, or this ayah, and when you read it, you don't understand it that way. This ijma is not hujjah. Because ijma is hujjah when it can help us discover the opinion of ma'soom, kashif and qawl al-ma'soom. Yeah? Here, it's not kashif and qawl al-ma'soom. It's not that they had something from ma'soom that has not reached us. We know what was the basis of their ijma, therefore we ourselves check and examine that basis. Even muhtamalul madrakiyya is not hujjah. Even if there is a chance that ijma was based on a particular ayah or hadith, it's not hujjah. So ijma must not be madraki, must not even likely be madraki. So that we can become sure, by looking at this ijma, we can become sure that definitely there was another reason. Okay? So ijma is not hujjah here because we have ayat, we have ahadith that shows there is no haraj. Okay?
I would like to ask a question.
Please.
Can you explain what madrak you have forgotten?
Madrak means argument, proof. Okay? There's a madrak means argument, proof, evidence. Al-ijma' al-madraki means a consensus which is based on an evidence like a hadith or Quran that is available to us. We can check it ourselves. For example, based on this ayah, ما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج, they may have made consensus. Okay. So what is the real hujjah then? The ayah, not their ijma. Okay? Because for Shia, ijma is only hujjah if it helps us to understand the view of Ma'soom. Sheikh Irwani says one of the very surprising claims is that one of the writers of al-Qawa'id al-Fiqhiyyah has said that there is no valid proof for Qa'idiyya Naf'ul Haraj. And he says, how you can say that while we have Quranic reference? مَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Or the second one, مَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيَجْعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. So there is good basis for that. Okay, now we go to the next question. What is the difference between haraj and dharar? Harm. Do you remember what is dharar? Yes, we defined it. Yeah, no, that was the difference between zarar and dharar, yeah. But what is considered as harm?
Loss.
Excellent. A loss in what?
Loss that can't be compensated.
We said loss can be in money, can be in body, can be in reputation, something valuable. Even it includes huquq. Remember, we said sometimes there is no money, but there is haqq. For example, you have haqqu shuf'ah. Okay? Someone doesn't let you benefit from haqqu shuf'ah. There is zarar. Yeah? Or you have haqqul intifa. You have rented some house, you want to use it, they don't let you to go to your home. Yeah? This is zarar. So we said, an-naqs في المال في البدن في العرض أو في الحقوق. This was dharar. What about haraj? Haraj is different from dharar. Sometimes they overlap. Sometimes it can be haraj and dharar. But sometimes maybe there is no harm, but it's very, very difficult. For example, if I tell you in the winter, in the night, you have to walk 10 kilometers to take water for wuzu, maybe there is no harm. Maybe you have warm clothes and you can do it easily. So it's not necessarily leading to harm. Or maybe even the weather is not very cold, but still to go 10 kilometers in the night walking in a village, it's not easy. So, but there may be no harm, but difficulty. So in haraj, our concern is not harm. Our concern is what? Difficulty. A difficulty which is very exceptional. Something that most of people would not be able to cope with it. Yeah, would find it too much. Makes life difficult for them. So there is a difference between haraj and dharar. Yes.
You mentioned a lot of physical harm or hardship. What about stress, psychological hardship? For example, if someone's very worried about walking that distance.
Yeah, if it is causing too much pressure, it can be. For example, someone is worried about his or her safety in the night, going there, in the night you have to go 10 kilometers and 1 kilometer is through a cemetery. So you may not be harmed physically, but if you do this, you may get emotionally disturbed. Yes.
Can you say these examples of zarar and haraj are shakhsi, that people have different capacities?
So we will discuss. We'll discuss whether it should be no'i or shakhsi. So what I wanted to clarify at this point is zarar is different from haraj. Zarar is harm, is a kind of naqs, loss in money or body or reputation or rights. Haraj is difficulty, great difficulty, is mashaqqa. But what type of mashaqqa? Severe mashaqqa. Otherwise, many things are mashaqqa. Someone says, for me, even to wake up for Salatul Fajr in my home is mashaqqa. Yeah? Or someone says, for example,
Somebody says, having a shower is mashaqqa.
for some people, even eating is mashaqqa.
No. Some food maybe.
Or washing, clothes and dishes might. No, we mean mashaqqatu shadida, something which is very, very difficult. Okay? So, harm and mashaqqa can overlap. Sometimes you have something which is harmful and difficult. Sometimes it is harmful but not difficult. Yeah? Like what? Suppose you have a skin problem that if you make wuzu, it's harmful, but you don't feel any pain. But doctor says this water is harmful. No pain, no difficulty. So there can be zarar without difficulty. There can be difficulty without zarar. There can be zarar and difficulty. Okay? So they are not the same thing. قاعدة نفي ضرر لا ضرر ولا ضرار is when there is a loss. قاعدة نفي haraj is when there is something which is very, very difficult. Another question: why قاعدة نفي الحرج is given preference over primary rulings for obligations? Why it precedes, it overrides? The same thing we had before about nadara. If you said we mentioned there many points, but we said there are 2 points which we accept. There are many points, but 2 points are what we accept. Do you remember those points? One was that when قاعدة لا ضرر, as we had before, or here قاعدة نفي الحرج, is given preference, still many cases remain for those primary rulings. It's not that every wuzu or most of the wuzu is coming with haraj or with zarar. Most of it is okay. So by preferring قاعدة نفي الضرر or نفي الحرج over ahkam, you are leaving for them a still great chance to survive. But if you want to prefer them over قاعدة لا ضرر or نفي الحرج, nothing remains for them. Okay? This was one point. Another point is hukumat. قاعدة نفي الضرر or قاعدة نفي الحرج is one of the cases of hukuma, means the dalil for this qaida is hakimun ala dalil for example fasting or wuzu, etc. What does it mean? It means that these rules of nafyul haraj or nafyul dharar are legislated by shari' and they refer to those rules a kind of modification, a kind of completion for those rules. So first we say you have to make wuzu for salat. Then we say, but if that wuzu is very, very difficult, you don't need to make wuzu. So nafyu zarar is nadharun. It's looking at them, means it's related to them, trying to clarify them. Okay? It's not vice versa, that Qa'idiyya, for example, for wujub al-wuzu, has come to tell us that nafyu zarar, when it is for wuzu, no problem. You can have zarar. It's not like that. It's the other way around. Okay? But you can say the first one, if it's easier, that if you want to act according to Qa'idiyya nafyu zarar or nafyu al-haraj, something remains for Qa'idiyya wujub al-wuzu or wujub al-sawm or hajj, because most of the cases have no problem. But if you want to do opposite and prefer Qa'idiyya wujub al-wuzu or wujub al-sawm or wujub al-hajj over Qa'idiyya la zarar wa la haraj, nothing remains for them. The next question is this leading to kathratu takhsis? If we say there is no haraj in Islamic Sharia and any legislation that leads to haraj should be removed, doesn't this mean that we have to actually remove most of the legislations? The answer is no. Many things are not haraj. Many things are manageable and we can do them. Haraj is something which is something that uqala say you cannot expect from people to do too much. But other things are uqala, ahkam that we have in Sharia. Like, I don't know, qisas, like for example, you have to give money for homes or zakat. You cannot say this is haraj. For me to give, 20% of my money is haraj. Uqala would not accept this as haraj. Okay? If you say it's difficult, yes, taklif has to be difficult. Unless you are a person who is very understanding and very good, for you everything becomes automatic and normal. For most of people, taklif is difficult. Yeah? So you cannot say any difficulty is to be removed. Okay, now that question that is very interesting. Is it necessary for nafyu al-haraj to consider every person, his or her capacity, or we should look at human beings in general? Is this an issue which is shakhsi, it's personal, individual, or naw'i, according to the human species? Yeah, it means human in general. It's the question. Many times in fiqh this question comes. For example, for haram music or haram singing. Okay? If we say it's, for example, something which is mutrib, okay? Is it for every person or it is for all people, average people? Yeah? Because maybe there is a person who is, for example, very strong and even, for example, the most kind of stimulating music would not have any impact on him. So can we say this music is not haram for him? Or if for most of people it is, problematic, for him also it's haram. In many cases this question comes. نوعی or شخصی. Anyway, here, should we consider capacity of every person? Me, for example, and you, each of us should calculate whether it is very, very difficult for me or not, or it is for general, for all of us. So this is the question. For example, if for a person who has always been living in cities, yeah, he has always been living in city, and he had electricity, he had water, even he has, warm water at home, yeah, and electricity, everything, security. This person, when he goes to a village, when there is no electricity, no pipe, line, for him, even to go to the washroom, which is outside, is very difficult. Okay? But for most of people there, it's not a problem. There are houses that for washroom, you have to go outside. Okay? So, should we consider capacity of this person or in general? The answer is we observe every person's capacity. So if for someone this is very, very difficult, this person has no obligation. But other people, if for them it's possible and it's not very, very difficult, so they have to do it. And he says this is what we understand from this ayah. مَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. This is something that for this person has become haraj, so he shouldn't do it. But maybe for you is not haraj, so you can do it. This is, of course, one opinion. Yes.
Like fasting, for example.
Yeah.
If the long fasting is haraj.
So, for example, a person is weak because of age, because of, I don't know, for example, his or her body. Maybe for this person it's haraj, but other people can fast. Yeah? For example, there is a person who is very old and weather is very hot, the day is very long. Maybe this person can, or someone is very, very young, a very young, for example, girl, maybe it's difficult, exceptionally difficult. But other people can do it. So we cannot say to her that you must fast because most of people are able. Okay? And most of people cannot say we don't fast because this girl cannot fast. Yeah? Because, actually some people make this claim. They say, how can fasting be 18 hours, for example, wajib? There are girls who cannot fast. Okay, who said they must fast? Anyone who cannot fast, he shouldn't fast. They sometimes bring this argument. Say, there are people who cannot fast. Okay. Even if it is 12 hours, then they cannot fast, they must not fast. There is no ambiguity here. Yes?
So is this where we have to take some kind of individual responsibility?
Yes.
That other people can't?
Yes.
Yeah, we don't expect other people.
But, of course, maybe you can take advice.
Yeah.
But, yes, in the end of the day, it's an issue that for every person, we may have different responsibility. If for one person is very, very difficult, that person is okay and has no responsibility.
So just one question.
Yes.
In that case, for example, when we are traveling and we are not fasting and we sing after, this rule can apply there as well. Some of the people, they are so strong, they can travel and...
No. Not to fast when you travel, it's not because of nafyul haraj.
That's another command.
Yes, and therefore we said yuridullahu bikumul yusr is hikmah, is not illah. Okay? So there can be many factors. One factor is that in many cases it leads to difficulties, but it's not the only reason, and it's not the 100% cause.
But normally when the lawmaker makes a law, it's for kulli, not juzi.
Yeah.
But why we are here, we going for particular, some of the people.
Yeah, so he has made the ruling that when you travel with certain conditions, you don't fast. Yes.
It's a must not fast. It's not a should.
In Shia fiqh, yes. You must not fast. Of course, there are certain conditions. For example, if you travel after Zuhr, you must fast.
If you reach before the...
Or if you, for example, are going to travel even before Zuhr, when you have not yet reached Hadd al-Tarakhus, you must be fasting. Yeah, you cannot say, because tomorrow I have to to travel at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I start eating from home. No. You have to be fasting till you reach Hadd al-Tarakhus. This is in the morning. And if it is in the afternoon, till Maghrib, you should keep fasting. You should complete the day.
And if you travel, you say from after Fajr, and you come back before Dhuhr, fasting is still valid.
If you have not eaten.
So, yeah.
But you could have eaten if you are away for distance.
If no eaten, then...
If you have not eaten and you are back, then you...
You know, one day's travel on an aeroplane in the morning, if you're traveling at 10 o'clock, for example. What is Hadd al-Tarakhus? Do we have to keep an idea that, we have passed this place, then we should be eating now?
Just when it goes few minutes, it's so fast that even Masafa, 20, 30 kilometers, it takes few minutes. Yeah. But you cannot break your fast while still it's around the city, because sometimes it takes time to take off or...
So in that situation, Sheikh, does it become obligatory on me to break my fast, even if I don't... 1 hour has passed, for example, I've flown to London, and I'm just going to be fine, I'm comfortable.
So if you travel, for example, 10 o'clock, and you are going to a remote place, so you should not have the niyyah of fasting. If you don't want to, eat, you cannot consider this as fasting, because it's haram for you to fast. Because before Zuhr you are traveling. Yes.
What about other Muslims who translate this verse? وَإِن تَصُومُوا أَفْتَرْ
They may take it as rukhsa, not azima. They may say it's possible, but not necessary. You have to check with them. Like Salatul Musafir. Some say it's possible to break your salat, to make it short, I mean. You can make it short or you can make it complete. But we say it's azima. You have to make it qasr. And
the Sawm and the Iftar في السفر,
we have azima. Yes. Okay.
إن الله يحب أن تؤتى رخصه كما يحب أن تؤتى عزائمه.
Yeah. But the question is it rukhsa or azima? So here we say it's azima.
They translate it.
Yeah. So now the next point here about qa'idatul nafi al-haraj is this actually. هل رفع الحرج رخصة أو عزيمة? If wuzu, say, becomes in some circumstances very, very difficult, we say it's not wajib to make wuzu. Wujub is removed by qa'idah nafi al-haraj. Okay? But is it still possible for me to make wuzu and say it's not wajib, Allah doesn't expect me to go through such difficulties, but still you can do it? So is it rukhsa, means a kind of permission not to make wuzu, or it's azima, you must not make wuzu?
It's like having choice in saying Zuhran together, or we have a rukhsa to say later.
For example, So some ulama have said there is rukhsa, means it's not necessary, but still you can do it. For example, Sahibul Urwa, Sayyid Yazdi, yes, the author of Al-Urwatul Wusqa, he believes that this is rukhsa. You don't need to make wuzu, which is very, very difficult, but if you do it, it's okay. Some ulama have said, no, there is no rukhsa, it's azima, means it's necessary not to make wuzu. And they have made some arguments. For example, Sheikh Na'ini is one of those people who, unlike Sayyid Yazdi, Sahib al-Urwa, Sheikh Na'ini says it's azima. One of the arguments is this. He says, look at this ayah about, this is ayah 6 of Surah Ma'idah, about tayammum. وَإِن كُنْتُم مَرْضَى, we had it before. وَإِن كُنْتُم مَرْضَى أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ أَوْ جَاءَ أَحَدٌ مِّنكُم مِّنَ الْغَائِطِ أَوْ لَامَسْتُمُ النِّسَاءَ فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً فَتَيَمَّمُوا صَعِيدًا طَيِّبًا. He says, when we read this ayah and put it next to the ayah about wudu, we realize that wujubul wudu is for al-qadir, someone who is capable. And in such cases, he is not capable. He has to do tayammum. Wudu is not legislated for him. Not that it is legislated and he has choice. So he wanted to say the umum for wujubul wudu is limited to the people who are not in haraj. Okay? So if you are in haraj, no legislation for wuzu. Basically, you are doing something which has no legislation. And he said, how is possible to say this person can make tayammum and also can make wuzu? Wuzu is not necessary, but he can make wuzu. He says it means that you are legislating two conflicting things. You are telling him, you can make wuzu, but it's not necessary, you can make tayammum. How can a person do both wuzu and tayammum? Okay? Sheikh Irwani says this objection is not very strong. Because if we were telling that you have to do both, that was a problem. But if we are saying that the main thing is wuzu, but from you we don't expect, but wuzu is still mashru', still is legal, it's legislated, you can do it, but we don't expect from you to put yourself under so much difficulty. You can do tayammum. In this way there is no problem. The next issue is about whether it includes hukm wad'i as well or not, and some applications. Because the time is over, inshallah we continue this next session. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Yes. Allah yahfazkum inshallah.